Hey, everybody. What's up, Steven? I hope y'all can hear us today. We're going to be talking print module and Lightroom. Let everybody gather here for a little bit, but say hey in the comments. Let me know who's listening out there. It's always a fun thing to see. We're going to go deep dive kind of on the Lightroom print module. It's what I use to print. I think, at least for me, it's a little more streamlined, straightforward. I like the ability to save presets so that I know the work that I'm going to be putting out is going to be consistent. And that's really all you can ask is just consistent outputs. And so then you know where to make changes in your workflow. If you're not getting consistent output, that's a problem. But that's really the goal with all of this is to get consistent output in your prints. So that if you do need to make an adjustment, you can, and you know what it's going to change, and it's not just willy-nilly all over the place. So awesome. Yeah, I love it when I'm coming in loud and clear. I have fixed that problem, by the way. I did figure out that I can go into the audio mixer and XSplit and make sure that I'm using the right microphone. So that's been a plus. So yeah. So yeah, if anybody else is out there, throw them out in the comments. We love hearing that. We've gotten a couple questions that we'll answer specifically today. But we'll wait, everybody. It's not even 7:30 yet, so we'll wait one more minute. Just get a chance to get a drink and hang out. But I went a little overboard today. I'm not gonna lie. I did go a little overboard, and I created an entire presentation for this one. So me, I can't do anything halfway. So this will be fun. So let me see if I can remember how to switch everything here. All right, so we'll be talking about the print module today. Yeah. Cool. Ooh. All right, so the first part's going to be a little bit of a little PowerPoint-y, and then we're going to go through and actually show you the actual Lightroom stuff. But I did take the time to make an entire presentation for you. So it was what I had to do today to work through my anxiety. So I was having a lot of anxiety today, so it was a good way to kind of pound on my keyboard and kind of work through some thoughts. So I was good. So. So why use a print module in Lightroom, right? Why not go to Photoshop, or why even use it at all? So for me, the key benefits are organization, kind of first and foremost. I use Lightroom as my catalog, right? I use Lightroom as the place that I find all my photos, where I rate all my photos. So I want to have access to them quickly, instead of having to search by folder or date, or right. And they're strewn all across maybe multiple hard drives for me. In my desktop, I have a couple hard drives. So for me, organization inside Lightroom is much easier than organization outside of Lightroom. And so finding maybe 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 photos for me inside Lightroom is much easier. And in fact, what I do is create collections. So for me, I have a 2-print collection. And so anytime that I find a file that I like, and that I know that I'm going to print at some point, I just add it to that collection. And it allows me to then go back and print exactly just from those kind of collections. So the other big thing for Lightroom, and what Lightroom has always done, right, is that there's presets for saving your work. We know presets for the look presets in the develop module, but there are in fact presets that you can create for your other modules as well, including print. And so for me, I had two different printers. I have one now. I've streamlined. One was kind of redundant, but I had a 600 and an 800. And so I'd had different presets based on which printer I was using and which paper I was using, and just being able to do basically in one click and go. That saved me a lot of setup time. And I knew that it was going to always be right. And that's kind of what I wanted. I always wanted it to be right. Now, I will say that you are going to get your best results from a calibrated monitor and a calibrated camera. And in fact, episode, I think 2 of this whole series was walking through camera calibration and monitor calibration. So if you are having problems, that would be the first thing I would check. Is to make sure your monitor is calibrated, and then secondly, get your camera calibrated, and that'll make your edits that much easier. We just tested out a new camera last week, and the first thing I did was get my color checker passport out and shoot a profile photo for it, so that I could make sure I was getting the best colors out of it. And I will tell you that it really changed the vibrance and saturation coming out of that R6. I was getting way better colors without having to pump up my vibrance and saturation sliders, but it's a more natural way to add vibrance and color to your files, right? So getting those calibrated monitors, getting your camera calibrated. To me, if you're gonna print, right, paper's expensive, ink's expensive, so spend the time and effort and get those things done. Now, the first year or so, or 2 years or 3 years that I used Lightroom, it did have, to me, some obstacles. The order of operations, won't lie, it's kind of weird, unless you realize that Lightroom works left to right. And once you realize that Lightroom works left to right, it really makes it a lot more easy to understand kind of what it's doing. Some of the other errors that I've come across, right, getting those print profiles, especially from third-party papers, and you can accidentally double profile, and you will get some very strange colors. I have done that on multiple 13 by 19 sheets of paper that are like $5 each, and I absolutely have double profiled. So it's building in an offset twice, and that's kind of a weird thing, right? Right. So think of a print profile as like an offset to go from file to the analog output. And so if you double profile, it doubles that offset, and you get some very strange color shifts. So yeah, don't do that. And then the other thing, right? The way I use my printer at home, Epson P800, what's up? Is that I usually print one big image on one big piece of paper. That's generally my workflow. Usually a 13 by 19 piece of paper, 12 by 18 inch print. And so learning how to create a sheet with 4 by 6s, I didn't know how to do that. Or learning how to do different sizes on one sheet. That was a learning curve, but once you understand it, it's quite simple. And then the other obstacle, like I said, is installing those third-party print profiles. And I'll do that. I'll do a live demo of that as well, kind of show you where to go for those. Again, if y'all are out there listening, say hey in the chats so that I know who to make fun of. No, so that I know to say hi and to thank y'all for watching our stream. So always a pleasure to see who's spending time with us on a rainy Tuesday night in Pflugerville, Texas. So for me, as I'm editing any session, if I think that I might be, if I think I might print it, I just drag that file into my to print collection. Okay. It just goes right into that to print collection. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do something. Sorry, one sec. That should, so I can actually see the chat. Nope, went too far. And so, yeah, just as I'm adding, just as I'm going, I just drag them over into that to print collection. And also files can exist on multiple collections, right? So one file can be inside multiple collections. And also you can nest collections as well. So, you know, a way you could also do it with maybe like smart collections is say, hey, anything that was shot in the last year that I rated as a 5-star, add to my to print folder. And that way you'll automatically have a running list of all of your 5-star files that you want to print. Okay, is that kind of cool? So just something to think about. What's up? What's up, Warren? How you doing, man? Welcome to the Azulux YouTube channel, man. It's good to see you. But I just think it's that way. Instead of having to go search when you're ready to print, just as you're editing, it gives you a chance to build a printing collection folder, and it's really easy. You just drag, right? It's very simple. Anyway, I think for me that's the easiest. So yeah, using collections I just think is a great way to prepare to have your files ready to go to print. Okay. Also presets. So I'll show you some more of these, but I just want to zoom in so you could see them real clear. Is I set them up once and then I use them forever. So the one of my favorites is this Legacy Barita 13 by 19, and I know that I've set up the paper to be that size, that paper, ready to go. And so then all I have to do is click that preset, drag the image, hit print, I'm ready. It literally takes me 20 seconds to get ready to print a file like that. Now, the first time I set it up, I wanted to walk through and make sure that it was absolutely correct and all of that. So the first time I did it, it certainly took longer than 20 seconds. But once it's set up, I know it's going to be right every time. And to me, that's such a key part of it. Is just not making errors. That Legacy Barita, 13 by 19, it's like $75 a box, right? I don't want to make mistakes. And so having that peace of mind that, hey, it's saved, it's going to do the same thing every time, that's really kind of huge for me. And I'll show you how to make templates here in a second. So again, right, everything starts left to right. And the first big button in the print module in Lightroom is that page setup, right? So the page setup button kicks off the dialog box, which is this one here. And then this is where you're going to change the media type or the print quality or color or source or size, right? My printer, it can do front load or sheet fed. And I think most printers that y'all might be using can do the same, right? Where you can, some really, the really delicate papers, you might have to flat lay them instead of coming through the source feeder. And so this is where you would change that. You would change the size, right? The other thing, my printer has two different blacks. It has a matte and a photo, and it does take a little time to change them. And so the different papers and the different papers are going to use different black inks, right? So there's an MK and a PK, MK for matte black, PK for photo black. And so changing over, right? So you might want to have one so that you know if you're changing over that you're ready to go. But this is kind of the big configuration of that page setup, right? It gives you a chance to change quality, everything else. So that's what that page setup button does. And that's just, again, we're starting left to right. And what we're going to do is we're going to work our way to the right-hand side now in the top right. Okay, so this is where this layout style, it's the very top right toolbar. And there's three choices. We have single image, picture package, custom package. If you want to do one big print, single image. If you want to do one image in multiple sizes, that's picture package. Custom package is where you might have, a 13 by 19 sheet with 8 4x6 boxes, and then you can drag 8 different photos onto it. So I very rarely, I don't know that I've ever used picture package, but I use custom package a lot, and I use single image the most often. Those are my two kind of most common ones. Okay. And so then as we're going down, and I'll flip over to actual Lightroom in a little bit to show you, but cell size is your image print size. It's kind of hidden. It's not really clear that that's what it is. It doesn't say, hey, this is your print size, cell size, right? So if you don't know what that is, you wouldn't know that that's what that was. But for me, on a 13 by 19 sheet, cell size, I want 12 by 18. That's the native resolution, native format of my cameras. So 12 by 18. Now, if you were building something in the custom layout, you might want to change those to 4x6 or 5x7. There's also presets there. Now this is in the very right-hand side toolbar at the very bottom. If you scroll all the way down in Lightroom, and this is where you might make some mistakes. So the first thing we would want to do, right? We'd want to print to our printer, right? That's what our whole point of today is. Right, we want to print to our printer. For me, my print resolution is usually 300. That's also what I save my files as. I don't have any issues with that resolution. I've never had a problem with that. For me, I really don't like doing a whole lot of print sharpening. I keep it low. I want to be in control of sharpening, not so much the printer, so I don't want it doing a whole bunch there. But as we're going down, where it says color management, for me, it's managed by printer if I'm using first-party paper, okay? So for me, I tend to use Epson paper with my Epson printer. It's all the presets are built into it, and so it makes it easier. If you're using like a Moab or you're using a Hanmule or you're using a different type of paper, you're gonna have to load those profiles. And so there are instructions too. Not only do you have to load the profiles, and this is an area where people get thrown off. Not only do you have to load the profiles, but those profiles are based on that original page setup button. It will tell you in that ICC profile when you download it, it'll have instructions with it, and it will say something like, "Hey, use for an Epson P800, use photo paper glossy." And then that ICC is the offset. So if you don't start with photo paper glossy, that offset's going to be wrong. So you really have to make sure that you read what source file it's based on, okay? Because it varies from paper to paper, and it varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, okay? So the workaround to get those installed, again, you have to download the ICC profile from the manufacturer's page, and then you make sure that in page setup that you select the paper type that it tells you to select. And it doesn't say it inside Lightroom. It says it from the manufacturer. Does that make sense as a difference? Okay. And then, Stephen, to answer one of your questions, I tend to not do the intent perceptual relative. But when I do load the ICC profile, I tend to do perceptual. So, and I don't ever do print adjustments in the print dialog. If I need to make an adjustment, I'm going to go back to my original file in the develop module and make my adjustments there, which is one of the big reasons why I like Lightroom, right? Because I can just flip over to the develop module if I need to make any last minute changes and then flip right back to the print module without having to open different software, right? I don't have to open Photoshop or whatever. I don't have to go back and forth. And so for me, it's just a little bit smoother. And then once we have all of that set up, we're going to want to save that work as a preset. Okay. So if we've done all that work, we're going to want to go back and hit that plus button on the template browser, right here. And hit plus, and we want to save our work. And in general, if you notice what I do is I start with the printer, the size, and then the paper type. Now for this Velvet Fine Art, it's a sheet load. Can y'all see that difference there? And so that Velvet Fine Art doesn't want to go through the sheet feeder. It'll do it. But then you have to kind of lay it flat for 24 hours. So the sheet feeder, it'll feed through flat. And a lot of the fine art paper wants to be sheet loaded instead of going through the feeder. Okay. Soft proofing, I don't use soft proofing. I don't know. It always confused me. For me, I know that if I start with a good source file, and I know that I start with a calibrated monitor and a calibrated everything, that I don't really need to soft proof. Now, what I will do is I usually buy a small paper size and I'll test it out before I print to the big paper size. So like for metallic luster, I'll get like the 8.5 by 11 and I'll just do test runs on that. And so that's kind of my soft proofing, is I want to see what it's actually outputting. But soft proofing, I don't know. It's never really worked for me. I know some people who do it, but like even Scott Kelby's like, I don't know, soft proofing is kind of weird. Like it's not very intuitive. So, to me, I've made more errors when I've tried to soft proof than I did if I just made the file right to begin with. So, all right. So throw your questions in the chat. I'm going to open up Lightroom and I'm going to walk through what I just showed you. Okay. That sound good? But if you have questions on printing, now would be a good time to throw them in the chat. Okay, so what we see here, we're in the library module. What? We're going to talk about the print module. Yeah, but I need to show you some stuff in the library module first. And so what I want to show you is just how easy it is to drag a photo in. So these are some photos I took or this is a photo I took Friday night, right? So if I wanted to print this, right, it's an 8 by 10. It's a big file. It's a very big file, 10,000 by 13,000 pixels. It's kind of big. But if I wanted to put it into my to print collection, all I have to do is click and drag, okay? And I can just drag it right into that collection, okay? And then if I just want to go to my to print collection, now I see it already selected, okay? And that's just as easy it is. You could also set up a smart collection, right? I talked about that earlier. If we're in collections, we can go to new collection, create smart collection, and let's call it print smart. Okay. And then I could say, hey, you know, any file that has a rating equal to 5, right? So that's my 5-star, that's my best files. Let's say it has a label color of red, right? Because that's how you want to set up your portfolio. I don't know. And you could create that, and then any file in it would run out and search all the photo files in your catalog, and it would return them instantaneously. And so you could generate a collection very quickly, and it would automatically update even as you import. Okay. So you might want to do label. You might want to do file type, right? File type is, right, it may be a JPEG or a TIFF, right? You might want to change it that way. But just know that you could create a smart collection, and it would create an auto updated collection ready to print. Does that make sense? Yeah. So for most people, Steven, just to answer your question, my prints come out looking just like my screen. But again, it's a testament to having your screen calibrated and updating it, you know, every couple months, you know, 1 to 3 months, update that calibration. And I know that files going to print are going to need probably a third of a stop to half a stop more exposure. Now, why is that? That's a great question. Why is that? Why does the source file need more exposure when it goes to print? Mostly because we're so used to our monitors, right, pushing light into our eyes. Okay, it really just pushes that light straight forward into our eyes. Whereas a print is reflective, right? Light hits from whatever room we're in, it bounces off the paper, and then it bounces back into our eyes. And in that bounce, it loses some of that exposure. Hey, Patty, how you doing? Hope you're caught up here. We just went through the presentation part. Now we're talking about any questions you might have in the print module. But right now we're specifically talking about the library module and kind of how to set it up for you. Again, this thumb strip down here, it's your active selection. So if I flip over to the print, those would be the ones that I would be ready to do. Yeah, exactly. It's the difference between backlighting versus front lighting. And so because we're front lighting it, it needs a little bit more exposure in general. And the other thing too is that a printer has a much more limited dynamic range than, let's say, a raw file might. And this is where looking at my histogram when I'm editing and keeping my blacks just off the black so that they're not all the way down, and keeping my whites just inside the white. That way when they go to print, I know that it's not going to have any weird spots in it. Especially if you're shooting with or printing on like a metallic luster or like that Moab slick rock. What gets weird is if you've peaked on the whites, as in you've blown out your whites, it won't lay down ink there, and you'll get some like ink deserts. And that can be a very weird thing when you're looking at it. It won't reflect right. There'll be deserts where it was blown out, where the ink didn't get put down. And you'll really notice if you have a lot of blown out highlights, kind of look at an oblique angle. So that may not be what you want. Now you can get away with that in like a fine art or a cold press or something like that, where it's not laying down that metallic flake. Or like canvas, you can get away with a lot more as well. So anyway, I know when I'm editing, I'm really editing my files for print to begin with, because a lot of my files go to print regardless. So that's just something I always kind of keep an eye on, is my histogram, right? those colors in the middle is going to make a better print than if you're, really dark or really on the edges. Okay, you really have to know your printer and the paper that you're using at that point, and it may take some experimentation. Okay, so for me, I have a collection called To Print. Steven, there's one of your Milky Way files. These are some of the other ones from different people that just have asked me to print files. And so I just drag them in there, and then when I'm done, I just say remove from collection. So if I've already printed it, a lot of times I'll just remove it for collection because I kind of want to keep it as a running tab for me. And that way I don't have a whole bunch of collections named print or to print or ready to print or, something like that. So I add and remove as I print. And so it's just a nice way to keep an easy collection going. So let's flip over to the print module. Oh, how about this one from Friday night? A little different. Yeah. Also, on the module selector up at the very top, if we can see that, if you right click up there, I don't ever use map, I don't ever use slideshow, and I don't ever use web. So I just unselected them, so I don't even have to look at them. So all I have to look at is library, develop, book, and print. And for me, it's just a little bit smoother. One less thing I have to worry about. Okay. All right, so again, our thumb strips doesn't change. We're in print, so I'm going to go ahead and expand that just to give me a little more room. So again, where everything starts out is in this page setup. Okay, so let's set up a new paper type. We'll set up a new paper type, and we'll set up a whole new preset, and we'll just walk through that so y'all understand. Okay, so page setup, right? It brings up my printer, and it's a Epson, P800. In this case, let's do a big print on this one because it's an 8x10 crop. So let's do 17 by 22. I don't know all the names and numbers. Where are those? There it is, 17 by 22. And then we could change, source. In this case, it's going to be sheet. Right, and then I'm going to hit properties, okay? And so this is where I can change the media type, right? So is it a photo paper? Is it a proofing paper? Matte, right? Fine art. Now the fine art papers usually ask you to go through and feed, hand load them. That gets a little cumbersome, but so let's say photo paper, and let's make it a legacy plantain, a nice platinum looking thing, right? So color, yeah, I'm gonna print in color. Quality, I just usually stay with quality. I don't really notice a difference between quality and max quality. I've printed them side by side, and I've never really noticed a difference, except max quality is slower. So that's where we are set up so far. Okay, so we're going to be using a 17 by 22 inch. We're going to be feeding it through the source. Okay, we'll hit OK. Hit OK. And so what you noticed is it changed the paper size here, and if you enable the rulers, you can actually see the rulers up top. So now we have 17 by 22. Now I do have an 800 which prints 17 inch. If you have a 13-inch printer, this paper type wouldn't work for you. You're going to get some really weird stuff. So make sure your printer can handle the paper you're selecting. Okay, so in this case, I would want to do single image. Yeah, right. So you go through your shampoo twice as fast, so you have to buy more shampoo. I think it's the same thing. But in this case, right, I would want to make this maybe like a 16 by 20 because it's an 8x10 crop. So I'm just going to come in here with 16 by 20. There we go. That looks right. I don't need any of that other stuff. And then all of that looks good, right? Print resolution 300 ppi sounds great. Print sharpening low. Plantain's a glossy, so I can leave that alone. And I'm going to hit manage by printer because if I selected a ICC profile here, it's going to double up. Okay, it would take that page setup offset and whatever offset I added. So this is a place that you can go very wrong. So if it's managed, if you're selecting the paper type specifically over here, just leave it alone. Okay, just leave it alone. You don't have to make any adjustments here. And so at that point, before I print, right, then I would want to come over to the template browser on the left-hand side, and I'm going to hit create new preset. And so then I'm going to call it P800 because that's the printer I'm going to. 16 by 20, and the paper type legacy plantain. Okay. And so next time I want to print a photo that size on that paper with that printer, all I have to do is click that, and all that work we just did is ready to go. Okay, does that make sense? Right, do the work once, save it, and you can use it forever. Okay. Now, let's say I wanted to make a, just like a bunch of little 4x6s or little prints, right? So I might go to custom package. Right now, I'm still set up for 17 by 22, right? We can see it in our ruler, 17 by 22. So let's just say I'm going to do a bunch of little prints. What happens is the cells change. So if you notice, instead of adding a specific cell, like inches, it gives you a whole bunch of different presets. Okay, now you can change those. All right, we can make you can edit it to be whatever you want. But let's say I wanted to make a sheet. I'm going to print a whole big sheet of paper. Let's see, I want an 8 by 12, and then I don't know, a couple 4x6s. And so this is just kind of creating the layout, and maybe like a 5 by 7. I don't know. Let's do. See, can we? Oh, nope, can't fit an 8 by 10. Let's get rid of that one. Okay, so we can just kind of move those around. So we could fit a whole bunch of different layouts in there. And then all we have to do at that point is just drag photos into it, right? So that one may go up top. Let's put, I'm going to rotate this one, and then we'll put that one in there because we're going to cut them up anyway. This one can go in here, and that one can go in there, right? So I just want to make a, a sheet of all these, and that's kind of ready to go. And so it would print, just these, and then I just take scissors or a chopper when I print it. But that's how you would do that, right? You would just go to this custom package. So if you want to have, for me, a lot of times I'll do a sheet of 8 4x6s on one big sheet of paper, and then that way I can cut it and still leave some mats for it. Instead of trying to load a bunch, 4x6 print paper, this is just a little bit faster way, especially if you don't have any small paper laying around. Okay. And then I could create a preset for this, right? I might create a preset for that layout of, 8 by 12, 4x6, 4x6, 8 by 10. I don't know why. I mean, I'd probably never use it again, but you could, right? You could create a layout. Now, I tend to not change the orientation of my paper. I always keep it vertical because that's how it goes through my printer. And if I need to change something, that's why I would rotate it in my thumb strip, if y'all watched my last class. But I would rotate it here because that's gonna more easily mimic how it's gonna come out in the printer. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. So what struggles in printing have y'all had? What struggles have you come across? You're like, man, this does not make sense for me. I don't understand. Ooh. Yeah. Because I know for sure that when I started, I got some really weird. I didn't feel like I was really on it. But after I wasted a bunch of paper, I felt better about myself. So how can I save you ink and paper? Where are you messing up? Where are you struggling? What things are causing you confusion? I will also say, going back to one of the things that Steven asked earlier, laptops, if you're editing on a laptop, I've noticed that especially like the MacBooks and some of the Dells, they kind of are running a competition to see who can make their screens the brightest. And then when you go to print, the photos look so dull because you never actually made any adjustments to the source file. The monitor was doing all the work. And so again, that's why I'm such a strong advocate for calibrating your monitors, because if you're like me and you edit based on feel and how it looks, if you don't have a good monitor calibration going on, you're not going to make the necessary changes to make it so that when it prints that it actually shows up. Yeah, so that's another good question. Like, what paper type looks best on for what image? Let's talk about that. Actually, I have some of these photos are loaded for that very reason. My two favorite Epson papers. I know I'm an Epson fanboy when it comes to printing, which is weird because I'm a Canon fanboy and everything else. But my kind of standby is the Epson Photo Metallic luster, the metallic luster. It's got just enough of that metallic flaking where it shows up, but not so much that it looks like a mirror. I think that Moab Slick Rock Metallic, it's so shiny. Like it's way more shiny, and it kind of starts looking like a party trick. Like it really looks like a mirror. Like it's crazy reflective. And that can work for some images, but for a wide range paper, I don't know that I would use that as much. A photo like this one of Haley here with that rainbow hair, because she has some of that reflection going on like in her dress and her hair's got all these colors, that would be a good choice. Like I would not put this on canvas. This photo is so detailed and there's so much information in it. I would not put this on like a canvas or a fine art paper with a lot of texture. And so, that one wouldn't work for me. My absolute favorite paper is the Epson Legacy Barita. It's a heavier paper, and it has just a little bit of that kind of that platinum look to it, that kind of silver barium look to it, right? That it's got a little bit of that in there, but it's got a very good heavy feel, and it's kind of a blend between like a canvas and the metallic. So it's got that heaviness of the canvas. It's got a little bit of texture, not much, and it's got a little bit of the metallic. To me, it's just kind of the sweet spot of everything. Another one that I use for more of my, this is my Voyeur series. I think y'all all seen that. So this one I printed all on the Epson Velvet Fine Art, and it added a lot of texture to it. And the reason I did that is because I was literally shooting through or around all of these window screens. And so that paper has a lot of texture to it, and it really mimicked what you were seeing. And when I deliver them to the people that volunteered, every one of them has been like, wow, like this just feels different. Like it feels like art. It didn't feel like a photo paper. But that Velvet Fine Art, like it takes a lot of ink. It soaks up a lot of ink. But it just has that feel to it, that it sets it apart as it's something different. I would say that I would advise against the use of any of the bright papers. So I know that Epson makes like a cold press bright and a hot press bright, and those have OPAs in them, OBAs in them, OBA, and those are optical brightening agents, and those tend to fade with time. And one of the advantages of trying to print something fine art is you want it to look as good this year as it does in 10 as it does in 100 years, and those OBAs fade. And so you're better off just going with like the cold pressed natural or a hot pressed natural, because those are the same paper structures without the brightening agents in them. And so that would be what I would recommend. And if you want to go and see them, honestly, like if you go to Precision, they have print books there from all the manufacturers, and you can touch and feel what they are. You can look and see kind of what goes on them. One of the things I don't like about the metallic luster is it's a very lightweight paper. I think it's like a GSM of 265. GSM just means like grams per meter, okay, or square meter. And it's literally just the weight of the paper. I tend to like a heavy paper, right? Snatch, right? Heavy is good. If you run out of bullets, you hit them on the head. That's kind of my preference too. I like a little bit of a heavier paper, because then if I deliver them to a client, or if I'm printing with them or hanging them up, they just kind of hold together better for me. So that's kind of where I am. So that's that number. That ranges, I think, a low of like 250 to like 350. That's kind of your general range. If it's above or below that, I haven't seen them, but it's somewhere usually, 300 would be kind of like heavy medium. Anything above 300 is pretty solid. Anything below 300, you're starting to get pretty light. But that's kind of the general range is in there. And learning how to read like what the papers are saying, right? What is the difference between a hot press and a cold press? Well, hot press, they mix the batter, basically, the paper mulch with a hot process. And the cold, they do a cold. So the hot has smoother, the cold is rougher because it doesn't melt down as much. So just learning what all those terms mean, I think helps demystify like what paper you might want to use. So yeah, any paper type questions? I teach a whole printing class at Lightroom where we get to print on a bunch of different paper types. So if you ever want to take that class, if we can ever meet in person again, that's a real fun one. And I'm going to use some of this. That's why I made the presentation, because I'm going to use some of this one for that one. Yeah, again, this is why collections work, right? Because I put all of my Voyager photos in this one, and then anything 2-star I wanted to print. Okay, so I'd make prints for all of my people of the 2 stars. Okay, this one actually is going to be hanging in the Round Rock Downtowner Gallery. I think it's up now, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, this was kind of a fun one. Yeah, that's the one we ended up printing. Yeah, Steven, that's a weird... I'm not sure why your monitor is doing that when it updates. I don't know what's going on with you there. So, but if you notice, they're all vertical because that's how I print. That's how the paper loads vertical. So for me, it's just easier to see how it's going to come out that way. I know sometimes I kind of have to turn my head and be like, what? But instead of trying to rotate the canvas, then I don't know which way it's going to rotate. And I try to keep things as simple as possible. I'm a guy, I can just do one thing at a time. So cool. Any other questions on the print module? There's Danielle. Hi, Danielle. And if you think of a question that you want to ask later, you can always email me. My email is josh@azulox.com. Always just email me if you have questions. If you want to come play with my printer sometime, just, I'll have a tip jar out. Just come play and print. I mean, I think it really changes. To be honest, like once we started printing, it changed the way we took photos, because I knew that I knew where the output was going to be. It was going to be on a piece of paper instead of living on Instagram or instead of living on Facebook. And with printing them, you never have to worry about Facebook compressing your photo, right? You never have to worry about the compression. It's already there. So when you show somebody, it kind of blows them away. So, well, awesome, guys. I'm going to go ahead and end it for the night. If there's something I forgot and tomorrow and you forget about it, just go ahead and email us. If you want to support what we do and learn from us and all the educational things we do and support our podcast and support all of these Lightroom lives and Josh Says Mean Things, there's a link right there, patreon.com/azulox. That's our educational platform. I'm writing an article on creativity in 2020 because I've been going through some struggles. So yeah, if y'all have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. If you have any questions, please email me. All right, guys, have a great rest of y'all's Tuesday, and we will talk to y'all soon.